Alright, so I've just started the setup sequence for an Age of Renaissance game. And everybody's been given their first card and made their bids. Now, I'm not like a lot of players. Most people who play this, and maybe this would be the case if I sat down to a game a little bit more likely. Most people believe that there's enough of a reason to avoid certain countries, no matter what, that you want to bid and a little bit to prevent getting some bad choices. My assumption there is if everybody believes approximately the same thing, that everybody's going to bid right about the same level, maybe $3-4, just to prevent getting themselves from getting a bad choice in countries right off the bat. Nothing to do with anything else. And there's a chance that whatever bid you make is just as bad as everyone else's, but you end up losing the luck of the draw then and paying $3 or $4 for the choice that you don't want, Hamburg or perhaps or Paris or whatever, one that's just intrinsically bad in your view. Me, I don't think that there's that big a difference. I think Paris is kind of iffy, but I don't think there's a terrible difference there. And you know, if I get stuck with the last choice for 0 when I don't have a card, I'm a lot happier than, say, if I bid 3 and get stuck with the last choice. Anyhow. Anyway, everybody looked at their cards, and only one person had a card that they really felt affected what they chose heavily. The second player ended up, I started him off, I thought that's an important enough card, I started him off at around $4, but ended up working my way down. He ended up only bidding 1 through my mechanism for deciding things. This player had the Silk card, which normally I would think would affect things, but there's kind of a problem with the Silk card. There's like several powers that are worthwhile. If you grab Barcelona, you can sell your Silk right away, but it's better to hold on to the card until you get more than 1 Silk. Well, this one's not terribly hard to get. The hard ones are over here. So the question becomes, okay, if you have a long-range goal for Silk, is it worth bidding on maybe one of the 3 Mediterranean powers who are going to be able to get there? And I think the decision there was he started around 2 and worked his way down and just wasn't willing to bid. So now I'm going to select my powers, actually, and the first player has to pick his. He's going to want one of these big cloth guys, I think, although Barcelona at wine is not terrible. That's kind of a long walk to get there. Getting to here would be hard. He could do it in 2 turns, but he's going to have to fight Paris for this and probably Genoa for that. He could get 4 wine within range of him. With the cloths, if it's Venice, he's got 3 nearby, fairly cheap, and then possibility for others. So I think for $1, he's going to take Venice. And I've got to figure out how I do these. I think I mark them like this as I mark down the countries. Now, how did the others come up? How do these tie bids happen? I don't remember that. It's been a while since I played. I'm assuming, yeah, it's going to be by dice, and everybody else bid a 0. So he's going to get Venice, and we mark that with a little cloth marker here on the 1 chart to indicate that he's got that commodity already. All right, for the others, I'll kind of work my way through and come back in a moment. But after we select the capitals, we have to put an initial bid between cash and tokens for turn 1, which will then determine the turn order, etc. I'll come back after all that's done. Okay, so I'm paging through the rules, trying to find how the order of play is actually determined here. Secretly allocating least tokens goes first. Result. Okay, so it's covered here. Trying to read this rulebook is impossible for me. With all the colors, the map, little inserts, all the little stuff, it's absolutely unreadable to me. I find it not too terrible once you blot all that out of your mind and can look at the text, but it's one of the worst rule books that I've seen that looks like somebody put a lot of effort into it. I mean, a lot. They really did try, and I'm sure it's great for a lot of people, but it's horrible for me. Okay. And it does suffer from the same effect as Republic of Rome, which is just so cluttered. So, everybody's put their bids in, and normally you'd write down your tokens in cash, the amount of tokens you'd buy, and how much cash you have left over. And that's basically, you have your money at the beginning of at the end of a turn or the beginning of the game, and you split that between these two. Well, for me to do this, I have to keep track of it on paper like this. I've tried it without keeping track of it on paper. There are some events and actions that require that you know the written amount. And it's just more helpful if I can keep it down there. I'm lucky I remembered that because I don't have a note anywhere. Let's see who picked what and what they did with it, because that's actually what's happened here. So the first bid, the guy took Venice. He had the cloth wine card. He definitely wanted that. And he ended up buying himself 16 tokens, which leaves him with 23 bucks. The 23 bucks will give him the ability to buy caravans. His plan, to try to get as many of the cloth areas as he can, get into striking distance to ship down to Tunisia, and see if he can get a big payoff off that and still pay stabilization. Alright. Who's next? Yeah, gotta find my order here. Barcelona was the next pick at 16 and 24 as well. And he's got the silk card. He's planning on a long haul there. Expanding as much as possible, probably using a boat. He didn't want to buy too many counters because Barcelona doesn't need a lot. With a ship, they can only expand to so many spaces, and this worked out to a good number for them. The third choice was Genoa. Good old Genoa down here. They have a stirrups card. They bought a lot of tokens. They bought 24 tokens with the possibility of, hey, if I fire off my stirrups, I can try to attack people who are near me, like Venice, if they come into Italy, which is going to be the case in terms of Florence, I think, and be able to at least kind of push forward my dominance in the way that I want to do there. It doesn't give him enough money to buy caravans, so he's probably going to be going with galleys. Our next option was London. London's a pretty good pick usually. Guy didn't have a card for it. He only has Enlightened Ruler. Depending on where he goes in the turn here, he put a pretty cheap bid, 1327. He's planning on firing that off early. People who know the game might target London conceivably, but it's unlikely. So, mainly, it's just if any other events come up, he's free from them. Holding on to that card and trying to get it to play right, it doesn't usually work well unless you have other events in your hand at the same time to play. Maybe he'll draw one. But in general, I don't like holding on to that card or using it terribly much. Our next is Hamburg. Now, and I forgot to write the final choice, which was Paris. Hamburg is, in some people's view, the worst of the powers. I'm mixed between it and Paris, and it sucks to be stuck with that, but it's good that you didn't bid if you're going to get it. You'd hate to have paid to get it. He actually took it ahead of Paris. He could have taken either one. I kind of made it a random chance. He has the Alchemist Gold, which can give him an advantage towards kind of boning one of his neighbors, either Paris or Venice, in order to maybe gain some general advantage in that direction. And then Paris was our final pick. I don't like Paris because of the big areas, the stone, hard to get access to the Black Sea or to the Med at all. And he's got a card that he's probably just going to play in order to avoid any misery burden. It's not going to do anything. It affects commerce. People with holding commerce expansions. He sees no reason to play this, since he's probably going to want He sees no reason to hold this since he's probably going to want Caravan as much as anyone does. So even if he didn't get it now. And his bid there was a 1921. London's was 1327. Hamburg 1525. Well, we have our order of play, right? London gets to be first pick. Next is Hamburg at 15. Now we got a couple of 16s, Barcelona and Venice. Well, we have a tiebreaker there, which is resolve ties in reverse order of capital choice. So what did I say we had? We had Barcelona and Venice. I think Barcelona was picked later than Venice. Even though we got it for free and Venice did not. They're going to show up like this. And now we have Paris at 19 and Genoa all the way up at 24. And now we're going to move ahead. And if I move my counters out of the way, I can see what's happening in the turn. Buy card, no one's able to do that. Ooh, we've got to draw cards. So everybody's going to get a card. Then they could buy an additional one, but that can't happen because nobody has the advance to allow that. And then they get to play their cards or pass. And for the most part, we'll see who plays what. I might do that in real time. Okay, so I've dealt the cards out, and let's take a look. The first player here is London. Let's see what the thought process involved in their cards are. They pull their cards and take a look. You know, they had the Enlightened Ruler. They knew about that and were thinking about playing it. And they pulled Walter the Penniless. Now, Walter the Penniless could give them 20 bucks off Overland East. Sometimes these are hard to use. They actually have enough cash sitting in hand, 27 bucks, that they could buy Overland East, and it's a useful ability to have. They could play this so nobody could take Walter the Penniless and use them as well. There's a problem though. They have 13 tokens that they bought, and they can use 5, 6, 7, 8 for expansion without buying anything. That means that they'd have a bunch of additional tokens. They could spend 3 of them to grab a card, but they'd still have a couple extra tokens that they couldn't use. They were counting on buying a boat to expand further and keeping extra cash. I think what they're going to do is stick to that plan, and they're just going to play the Enlightened Ruler card because there's a slight penalty if they don't play it. They'll have to pay 3 bucks to stabilize their hand. As it stands, they're only going to have to pay 1. So that's kind of their thinking on their first turn. Let's look at the next one. The next one's Hamburg over here. And I haven't looked at their cards. Well, they have 2. They have a wool card, and they don't think that they can get wool very easily. So they're going to play that. Early in the game as it is, they're going to play this wool card, and that's going to produce 2 bucks for London, who has the only wool. This is kind of a hose for London, because those cards probably would get played later in the game, and by turning it around so early, it means they're not going to get a payoff on the first deck wool. They have 2 cards available, so there's still one other that they could gather up more wool from, but they would have expected more cash no matter what, even if they didn't have the cards. The advantage of it is it will be in the second deck as well. Sometimes the card comes out late and doesn't make it into the second deck. What about the other Hamburg card? It's this Alchemist Gold. He wants to hit someone with half their cash. Now, he's got a lot of choices here that are all interesting. First of all, there's London, who has 27 bucks. He could hit them for the most at 13. That would prevent London from being able to cross over. But London's not terribly Hamburg's problem. They could compete up here. They're a little bit more worried about either Venice or Paris. Now, Paris has 21 bucks. This could prevent them from getting Caravan, which is very appealing. Venice has 23 bucks, and it could prevent them also from getting Caravan. Which one do we want to hit is the question. It's a tough call here. I feel more threatened in a way by Venice. I don't have any other real options here. I'm going to kind of make this a chance decision because it's probably going to make an enemy all game. I'm going to hit Paris with it. I was leaning a little bit more towards Venice, but by hitting Paris, it's going to cost him $10, and that will keep Paris from being terribly effective at expanding this turn with all those tokens. They may buy a boat, and we'll see what that causes. I'll go through the rest and come back in a little bit and show you what the cards all were without going through all the thinking. Okay, some interesting choices were made so far. I haven't completed the entire cycle of card playing. Venice, who did not get hit with that money problem, has two cards. Their new draw was the armor card. This is a hard call because holding on to it's just costing him money. But he decided to hold it until he has a turn where he wants to expand. It's a bonus in competition on offense and defense, and he's not thinking that's going to happen. Now, little does he know, but these stirrups are going to be used against him. And that would have been a huge bonus to have the armor against that because it actually voids the stirrups as well as having its own effect. It's a better advance. But he doesn't realize that that's likely to happen this turn and wasn't planning on a lot of competition. Moving over to poor Paris, who's been hit hard. Well, Paris threw the Revolutionary Uprisings, which doesn't have any effect. But they're going to get back at Hamburg with a war card. They're going to declare war on him, and this is a particularly nasty little card for both players, essentially. Basically, each player makes a roll, and the highest total gains a misery, the lower total gets 2, and the difference between the die rolls is the amount of supported circles that the loser must cede to the winner. Loser's choice. This can be the home territory, and if it ties, they end up continuing the war. I'm going to use black for Paris and white for Hamburg. They're going to roll for it. There are modifiers to this. Military cards, etc. can modify it, but they don't have them out in things like nationalism. They tied, so they each gain a misery, and I'll put a little Hamburg marker here to remind me this continues each turn until it's resolved. And this is kind of an unpleasantness for both players at this point because they're not gaining anything yet. But, and you know, both sides kind of wished it would just be over with. Well, it's not. And that's kind of the worst of all effects. Sometimes it's useful to hold on to this card and try to get a good card for it. But Paris is pretty pissed at Hamburg, and they're saying, okay, you hurt me, I'm taking you down too. And that's the kind of thing that just happens. Moving on to Genoa. Genoa does not want to play the stone card. They have a lot of stone near them that they can gain, so they can get money from that. But they are going to play the stirrups card and give them that military advantage. Alright, I'm going to load this one up and then go to the purchase and upgrade and go into maybe some of the thinking behind some of the purchases at the early stages of the game. Later on, it just becomes too hard to pay attention completely. Alright, up this goes.